Welcome to Not Another White Box, the channel that brings you all that's cool, quirky and unusual in the caravan world. My name is Cameron and today I'm starting a brand new series called From the Archives, which is pretty self-explanatory. But if you don't know about me or my channel, I am an enormous caravan history buff. I have literally hundreds of, if not thousands, of old caravan magazines, brochures, articles and things dating right back to the earliest days of caravanning. So the purpose of this series is to show you some of that and show you some of the history, and I'm going to be giving you a real close-up view of some of these amazing pieces of caravanning history. But for the first video today, I've teamed up with the Caravan and Motorhome Club, and I'm going to be showing you 3 of their magazines from over the years and talking about how caravans, but how caravanning in general has changed. So it promises to be quite a nostalgic video for some if you remember it, or perhaps an educational video for others if you weren't around back in the 60s, 70s and 80s. But we're going to pepper it as well with a look at some brochures and a few more things to just give these magazines a bit of colour and historical context. So before I go any further, please do make sure that you subscribe to the channel and click the little notification bell to be in receipt of notifications when I post new videos, because there will be more of these archive tours coming. But also going to talk a little bit as well about how you can get hold of the entire Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine archive right at your fingertips on your smartphone, tablet or desktop. But more of that later. I think we should dive in with the first magazine. So today I've got 3 magazines to look at. We've picked on the month of November, and what we're going to start with is November 1967. Now this is a really poignant month and magazine for the Caravan and Motorhome Club. And first off, I'm going to get something out of the way. If you've followed the Caravan and Motorhome Club, you'll know that they've had a rebranding in more recent years as the Caravan and Motorhome Club. But they used to be called just the Caravan Club right back in 1907 when the club was founded. And the original name of the magazine was called En Route. And people watching this who might remember these, this would be quite a nostalgic thing for you. En Route magazine was the principal way that the club would communicate with its members. But it didn't just cover aspects of what happened within the Caravan and Motorhome Club. They covered general caravanning news as well. But the really poignant thing about November 1967 is that is the month that the Caravan and Motorhome Club, then called the Caravan Club, voted to allow members with so-called motor caravans, or motorhomes to you and me, to join and become members. Now if you don't know, there was a bit of a famous long-standing rift amongst caravanners and motorhomers, which wasn't really any fault of the clubs. It's just the two saw each other as very different breeds of what could you say, leisure activists? I don't know. Sounds a bit strange, but this stems right back to before the First World War, when the leisure industry was starting to form, and the early wagoneers, as we sort of know them as, these are the earliest people who were building motorised caravans and trailer caravans, struggled to agree on the definition. The only thing that people seemed to agree on is that the term caravan was quite all-encompassing. So you would have a trailer caravan if it was a touring caravan that was towed by a vehicle. You'd have a motor caravan if it was a caravan with an engine. You would have a folding caravan or collapsible caravan, as they were called, because there was quite a lot of designs at the turn of the century that either folded manually or telescopically. And finally you would have a trailer tent, which was predominantly a camping vehicle. But everybody seemed to agree that the term caravan was quite all-encompassing, and I don't think the term motorhome had been coined yet. In fact, it is an Americanism, and it's something that doesn't really creep in the English language, certainly until the 1980s. So back in November 1967, the club votes in favour of letting motor caravanners join, and as we're going to explore in the minutes of that meeting, it wasn't quite plain sailing. So straight away, one thing you'll notice from the magazine cover is that it is in black and white. This is the 60s after all. We've got a nice little picture of a campsite scene here, and of course it's quite a large magazine for the day. Back then you would get quite a lot that were just a small A5 size, so this is quite a big magazine for its day. And although it's a large format, there's not actually a lot of pages. I think there's 24 pages overall, so there's not even a spine on it, so there's not too much in the way of adverts in here. It's very, very content heavy, and it's all kind of crammed in. This is just effectively a large newsletter to communicate with the membership what's going on. So straight away, when we look in the magazine, it kind of follows a familiar format to the present day magazine, in that the first thing we see is an article, a little passage from the editor, and you've got the contents page. And we've also, interestingly, got an advert for Practical Caravan magazine on the left, which had only just launched in June, I think, of the same year. So Practical Caravan, which today is one of the mainstream media magazines in Britain, back then it was a brand new magazine, so they're trying to sell it to Caravan and Motorhome Club members as being a great magazine to buy. One of the first articles that we get to is this article about towing a caravan fitted with electric brakes. Now, the interesting thing about this point in the 60s is that the caravan industry is beginning to become standardized. We've had decades and decades of caravans having different tow hitches, wiring diagrams between the caravan and the car for the towing lights, different sort of standard wheels, chassis parts, etc. And by 1967, the industry is kind of getting together to try and establish what should be the standard. So here, an article from a chap called John Yoxall, who was a real hardy caravanner back in the day, and obviously a Caravan and Motorhome Club member, but he wrote a lot of articles for Caravan magazine and even published a few books himself. So this is someone who really knows what they're talking about, and he describes this as the towing revolution. And he hitches a caravan up to a Hillman Hunter that's been adapted to have electric brakes. And what I love about this is this is the 60s, so the people reading this are generally quite technically minded. Caravanners are quite hands-on people, and you will notice the emphasis throughout this magazine is on how to improve your caravan, how to make it better, which is a bit of an alien concept today, because caravans are tied in so much with warranties that you're not allowed to modify them or make changes. But this is a theme that we'll see in this magazine, is that they are reporting on what other members do to improve their caravanning experience. But I love straight away these technical drawings. Obviously someone's put a lot of work into this. We just don't see things like this in magazines anymore. Aside from the photos, we've got these wonderful detailed line drawings that are really clearly labelled, that show you exactly how this system works. After the break article, we've got a full report on the new Caravan models for 1968. And this is an independent report put together by the Caravan and Motorhome Club to inform members of the changes and developments for the year ahead. And straight away, the main news, or one of the main new models to launch for 1968, is the Sprite Colt, which is a stripped-down version of the Sprite 400. Very, very rare model now, and didn't really sell very well when it was new. But to perhaps bring a little bit of context to this, I'm going to show you the original 1968 Sprite brochure, which I have in my collection. And straight away, isn't that a fantastic front cover photo? So Sprite were really good at marketing, better than anybody else, and they saw the merit in spending money on advertising their products very effectively. And it obviously works, because by 1968 they were turning out roughly 25 to 30,000 caravans a year. They were the biggest caravan manufacturer in the world that we've ever seen before or since. And for context there, the biggest manufacturer in Britain today manufactures around about 6,000 vehicles a year, I think. So it goes to show the true scale and reach of Sprite caravans back in the 1960s. And it kind of came back to the brochures. And the interesting thing about the 1968 brochure is it's the first caravan brochure perhaps ever in the post-war years to sell caravanning rather than the Sprite caravans themselves, whereas other manufacturers, as I'll show you in a minute, just had pictures of their models and just told you all the technical information. Sprite took a completely different approach and got these brilliant photos of their caravans in all different scenarios, and the first 2 pages of the brochure, and they're selling caravanning as a lifestyle, as opposed to even mentioning the Sprite brand really. And straight away on the front cover we've got this fantastic shot on the beach with a Sprite Alpine. You've got mum hanging out the door with a little teapot, kids running around the fire, and dad's lighting the campfire on the beach. And it's not really a scene that you would ever see, but straight away you're interested, aren't you? And then as we turn the page we arrive at the Sprite Colt. Now, as I mentioned, this was a stripped down version of the Sprite 400. It weighed about 50 kilograms less and cost a little bit less too. But ultimately it was a way for Sprite to reuse some of their older parts that they still had in the factory. So it has an early 60s style kitchen that Sprite used to fit in about 1962, 63. It's got the earlier 1967 kitchen cupboards. They reused the early 60s lino flooring. And then they used the mid-60s Sprite 400 wardrobe. So it really is a bitzer of all the things at the factory that they needed to use up. And consequently, it didn't sell very well. So it dragged on into 1969, but halfway through the year, they dropped the Colt model altogether. Now, although the Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine does not report on the rest of the range, I'm just going to quickly show you some of these photos because they are brilliant. We've got the little 10-foot Sprite 400 with a little family sat having coffee or tea. I'm not sure what they're having there. Looks like there's biscuits on the table. Then you've got this fantastic shot of the Sprite 400. Dad's out fishing, kids are playing around the caravan. Very, very typical shot of the era. Then we move on to the Alpine. There's the daytime version of that wonderful cover shot where they're on the beach, and it's just so fantastic, isn't it? You've also got mum putting the kids to bed in the little hammock bed at the front of the Sprite Alpine. It's just, they don't make caravans like this anymore, do they? Moving on, we've got the big 14-foot Musketeer, and for 1968 they had a new model called the Musketeer C. Which was really, really, really popular. You got some more shots there. But you've got the little boy playing with his Action Man. The girl's having a hairbrush on the back seat. It's just putting the family in the picture, which today every caravan brochure does. But back in 1968, there was only Sprite that was doing this. So it was very, very groundbreaking. Finally, we arrive at the big 16-foot Sprite Major. I mean, just look at that caravan. What a fabulous design. And there it is, I think pictured in Italy somewhere. Sprite would send all the models off all over Europe to be photographed for their literature. And this literature would be used all over the world where Sprites were sold. So they'd take the same photos to use them. And then finally we just got a bit about selling Sprite right at the very end. Why pick Sprite as the caravan to use? But you've got to think, back in the late 1960s, Sprite were known the world over. It was a name that was synonymous with caravanning. So they were already halfway sold by the time someone had picked up the brochure back then. But as I'm sure you'll agree, that does a brilliant job of selling the caravans. I absolutely love it. Back to the Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine. We've got some more new models on the next page. And here we've got a real cross-section of stuff, because there's so many caravan manufacturers back then. Now we've got kind of 4 or 5. Back then there would have been around 30 or 40. So much bigger industry with a lot more variation. The next caravan we're going to put a little spotlight on is the new Incl Topaz. As you've guessed, I have a late 1960s Incl brochure. These were actually part of the Caravans International group who produced Sprite, and they were built at the factory over the road from where Sprites were produced. So we've got this, I think that's an Incl Sapphire. Yep, it's an Incl Sapphire been towed by a Triumph 2000 by the looks of things. Great cover shot again. But although they were part of CI, Incl's was still quite a traditional brand. So despite its very futuristic shape, it was much more conservative, traditional caravan. And you've got a little bit of selling the lifestyle in this brochure. These fabulous photos of an Incl Sapphire being towed out and about with a family of 4. Look at those curtains. I love, you just make out the Catherine Olm teapots and things in the kitchen. It's fabulous, this brochure, I love it. But then we are straight into selling the caravans themselves. I'll just turn to the Topaz. You've got orange, which I came dressed for this video. The Topaz was the new 2-berth, and it was a really popular van that stayed with the Incl's brand for many years. Even when Swift bought the brand in the 90s, the Topaz name still survived. But it was new in 1968, it was a new model, and it's a little 2-berth end kitchen. But yeah, just look at the colourfulness of this brochure. But still quite simple compared to the Sprite one. Like I said, they're focusing on just selling the caravans as opposed to the lifestyle. And we'll look at one more from the magazine, and I think we need to look at something from the upper bracket. That, to me, says it all. Caravans were kind of on a class system back in the 1960s. It's not like now where you just get top-end caravans are the same build as bottom-end caravans. They just got more equipment in them. Back in the 1960s, the more money you spent on the caravan, the more luxurious it will be perceived to be. And that extended right across every single aspect of it, particularly the caravan design. The En Route magazine here focuses on the Pierman Briggs Safari, which was one of the poshest caravans around in 1967-68. And of course we've got the brochure, which says in beautiful font, the incomparable Safari Caravan. Incomparable? Am I saying that right? I don't know. I don't know. We've got the incomparable. Incomparable, it's gone weird, I've said it too many times. Whatever, Safari Caravans, 1968. It's got gold embossed lettering with a textured cover, which is on beautiful thick card. And we open it, we've got a colour photo of a Safari 15-4, which is exactly the same photo that's been reproduced in black and white in the En Route magazine. But again, like I said earlier, this is just focusing on selling the caravans themselves. So if we turn to the page that's got the 15-4 in, you've got all the information here about the model, some exploded diagrams of it. It's very technical. It's very much, you're interested in our caravans, here's all the information. That's all there is to it. There's no waffle. There's no sort of hard sell. However, there is a lot of superlative language in here. You've got things like the new Safari 15 is designed to give the luxury many enthusiasts have been waiting for. And I think the main selling point of this is how much standard equipment it has, which, I sat down for this, includes 3-inch foam mattresses, an oven and a cooker, a fitted fridge that runs from the gas, cocktail fitments, which to you and me is a set of glasses, 12-volt lighting, crockery cabinet complete with a 27-piece set of crockery and a host of other refinements. Do you want one? Because I think I'm sold. What that translates to in real life is Safari was supplied with avocado green melamine set, which was fitted into one of the cupboards neatly. I'll show you some pictures of the Safari that I used to have to show you exactly what I mean. But the cocktail fitments were glasses which were hand etched with the Safari logo, because of course this is a refined luxury caravan. And A story I heard from one of the people who used to work at the factory was in the 70s when Esso used to give away free wine glasses with if you bought so much petrol, which, let's just stop. There's a lot of things to unpack with how wrong that is. But I've checked and it was a thing. People genuinely used to save points at Esso petrol stations in Britain to cash them in for wine glasses. It was the 70s. And Safari used to get their workers to pull these glasses, bring them into the factory, and a woman who sat behind the desk at reception would hand etch the Safari logo using a stencil. And no disrespect to that lady, whoever you are, but when I looked at getting a set reproduced, the engraver said they couldn't engrave a glass as badly as that to make it look authentic. Make of that what you will. So yeah, back to the Safari brochure. It's very, very simple. It's all in black and white, apart from one colour photo. And you've got this ridiculous, elaborate guarantee, which looks like it's in some kind of frame. And it's very simple. It's very serious. And there it is, the Safari Caravan. So we've looked at all the Caravan models. We've looked at a broad range of Caravan models for 1968 there. And we can move on to the main article du jour, which is the 3,000 majority vote opens up the club to motor caravanners. And I'm going to read a few excerpts from this because it's quite funny, to be honest with you. It's brilliant social commentary on how people worked with clubs in those days. But they got a majority of 3,000. The exact voting figures were 7,816 people voted yes, and 4,836 people said no. So it wasn't like a clear landslide as such. There was still a lot of resistance to this. But it said there's a crowded gathering at the Royal Commonwealth Society Hall in London on October the 21st, and it greeted the figures with applause after a discussion that was surprisingly short and peaceful, considering the previously expressed opposition. Who'd have thought my channel would turn into a drama channel? Most of the steam had, in fact, evaporated a few hours earlier when, in a specially called meeting of the council in the same hall, a proposal to amend the bylaw 2A offering membership specifically to owners or hire purchasers of trailer caravans was deferred by 44 votes to 24. Virtually all the meat that was left for the General Assembly to pick over was an attack on the en route leader that had advocated admission of motor caravanners. A complaint by one of the leaders of the, quote, antis was that the other side had not played according to the rules. So this was a pretty big deal, this meeting, and it saw the club chairman, Frank Collins, step aside, not because of that. I think he was retiring, and from what I've heard from the Caravan and Motorhome Club collection, the historians who've worked there over the years, they said that Frank Collins was a very well-liked man, and it was kind of his legacy, I think, that he wanted to get motor caravanners into the club on his resignation year, which he did. And then the club welcomed in a chap called David Knight. So it's quite interesting, really, that this argument had waged on for years with the Caravan and Motorhome Club. So it's kind of ironic now, all these years later, that it will be rebranded to include the motorhomes as well. So there's lots of other things reported on. They've elected new officers. They've upped their game with landscaping campsites and really starting to develop the UK campsite network. Because until 1966, you could still legally wild camp in Britain. But as of 1966, that was outlawed. So suddenly all these caravanners that were around had to go somewhere, which we're going to see in the next few years is going to make the Caravan and Motorhome Club site network greatly expand at a huge, huge rate of progress. And there's a lot of details about that here. Let's not get bogged down with committees. Let's move on. We've got a lot of club letters, which again, you've got to remember, this is the days before social media. This is the main way that the club will communicate with the members, and indeed the members with each other. So we've got a lot of pages of letters in here, which are all kind of something and nothing. hasn't changed, has it? But everyone wants their voice, wants to be heard, and it's brilliant that they get featured in the magazine. Even now, I occasionally scan through them and see what people are up to. Not much. Finally, we've got some reports on the rally centres around the country, which of course rallies still go on today, and we still have a little section in the Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine for that. And very helpfully, they've actually printed the caravan exhibition plan to show you where all the stands are at the Earls Court Caravan Show. And again, it's very, very useful for the members, and we're seeing a club here that's really working for its membership and working hard to get all the information it can. And this magazine is almost a little bit overwhelming because it's just information, 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 very little in the way of adverts or visual content. It is just this, 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 and this you need to know. So really, really well researched, really well put together, not very big. Interesting read from a historical perspective, but I don't really think it's the sort of thing that you would sit and flick through at a leisurely pace, quite like you do now when there's a little bit more substance to the magazine for sure. But fascinating nonetheless. And so that was how the caravanning world was in November 1967. And we're going to move on now, quite a bit actually, to November 1981. For the En Route magazine, which, as you'll notice straight away, has gone into colour from black and white. So in the, I can't do the maths, help me, in the 14 years between these magazines, they've gone full colour, and this is a substantial magazine now. We've got, and let me check how many, we've got 64 pages, so it's tripled in size, and we've gone to colour. So let's dive in and see what changed in that 14 years, and spoiler alert, it is a lot. Just before we go any further, I just want to tell you how you can get to look through these magazines at your own leisure. If you head to the website www.themagazinearchive.com/CAMC, and that's Caravan and Motorhome Club, CAMC, you'll be brought to the homepage where, if you are a paid member of the Caravan and Motorhome Club, you can enter your membership number as the password, and you can freely browse the entire En Route magazine archive right back to January 1963 to the present day at your leisure. If you're not a paid Caravan and Motorhome Club member, don't worry, you can buy a membership pass for that particular magazine archive, where you will find that entire Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine collection, in addition to absolutely dozens of car magazine archives dating back to the early 1900s. So if you've enjoyed today's video and like looking through these, do check that website out. And again, if you are a paid Caravan and Motorhome Club member, do use it. It's a free resource and there's no time limit on it. You can just go in and browse these at your leisure, although I'm warning you, it's quite addictive, and you can really, really get stuck in to reading tons and tons of stuff about caravans over the years. As you can tell, I'm a little bit sad, and I'm very, very impressed by the service, and it's the first of its kind for the caravan industry. And in the meantime, I'm going to get on and show you what caravanning was like in 1981. So straight away, you'll notice that in the 14 years between these magazines, we've gone from black and white to full colour. And what you can't see on camera is that this is a much more substantial magazine. We've gone to 64 pages instead of 24, so it's almost tripled in size, and it's gone to feature a lot more colour, but still a lot of black and white. It's a very thin magazine, which is kind of where we're going again. But the format is very similar. You've got En Route at the top and a nice big picture in colour now on the cover, which ironically has a late 1960s Eccles, which we looked at in the last magazine on the cover. Opening the magazine, there are straight away adverts, which we don't have too much of in the first magazine, but you're going to see this more and more. And when we move on to the 90s in a minute, you're going to get a kick out of some of them, trust me. Again, very familiar looking. We've got a contents page, letter from the editor, and details of the club itself. And we've got 2 pages of news, and again, the club still reports like this now. You still get all your vital information about the caravan industry in the Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine. But some of the things that stick out here to me is that we've got a picture here of a lady cutting a ribbon with a beautiful car light and a Land Rover. And this is Councillor Mrs. Margaret Taylor. She's chairman of the Bromsgrove District Council, from who the club leases the site at Chapel Lane. Now, if you're watching this and you remember, you'll know that Chapel Lane is still a site that the club has on its network today. So, if you're wondering, late 1981 is when it opened. Continuing with the club news, and we've got information about new sites that have opened and site updates and things. And this still goes on in the magazine. They still report on details, updated contact details and things for sites. It really, the magazine still is this great forum for communicating these things with the members. Because of course we don't all read emails, we don't all look at social media, but when this lands through the door, you have a better chance of reading it and absorbing the information. Moving on to an advert now, which I'm going to talk about because it's quite interesting. We've got Morco. Add style and comfort to your caravan. This is the early 80s, so we're starting to see now caravans have gone from being very basic like we've seen in the 60s, where you saw that top of the range Safari was bragging that it comes with a cocktail set and melamine and a fitted fridge and cooker. Now by the early 80s people want more than that. It's generally accepted that caravans will have mains electric and a fridge fitted by the early 80s, but Morco are selling items such as gas heaters, gas water heaters, electric lighting, slightly better gas lamps as well. But this curious piece over here, which is the Morco hairdryer, you read that right, hairdryer, and it works by bolting it to the cooker. I'm not making this up. You bolt it to the cooker, light the cooker top, a metal plate heats up, and inside, on top of it, is a box with a fan in it that funnels the hot air down a tube. You then connect it to a 12-volt battery, and there is your hairdryer. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't a big success. So, in a bit of a crossover with the Caravan Motorhome Club and my channel, I'm just going to do a little quick segue to when I caught up with Angela Willis, who was the previous curator of the Caravan and Motorhome Club collection, and they actually had one of these in their collection and she taught me through it. So let's take a quick look at that now, because it is absolutely hilarious. Oh wow, look at that. This is something that belongs in my caravan, not in this museum, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's a real treat.
Not much use for me,
No, not much use.
Definitely belongs in my
I could do
caravan.
with it today with hot, humid hair.
Look at this. And it's orange. This is just the 70s in one box, isn't it? Really?
It is. It's wonderful.
Look at the photos on it. So this presumably went on a gas cooker.
Yes, it demonstrates it here. So you would put it on a gas cooker, and then you would carry away and style your hair.
Brilliant.
In the comfort of your caravan.
And just in case you didn't know how to style your hair, they've got this selection of
yes, very useful photos. And there's also a cap so that you can set your hair as well while you're on holiday.
This is incredible. I want one. So what do you think? Are you sold on one? Do you fancy strapping that to your cooker and then plugging it in and seeing what happens? I'm almost tempted to try and find one on eBay and try it out on this channel. Not that I have great hair to dry, but I think I might end up blowing the thing up. Surely people didn't. Well, no, people didn't use it, otherwise we still have them today, but that seems terrifying. Moving on, we've got recipes on the next page, which today we still feature recipes. The lady that works with the Caravan Motorhome Club now is a friend of mine, Karen Wright, and she is a good time gal from West Yorkshire like myself. You'll have seen her in a few of my videos, and she still writes for the Caravan and Motorhome Club magazine, sharing recipes and things that are easy to cook on the go. And I think her recipes are a little bit more inspiring than Elva cake, stuffed pears and deviled steak, which I don't even want to get into that because they all sound disgusting, but it was the 1980s after all. Moving on, we've got Geoffrey King reports. So you remember that I mentioned John Yoxall in the 1960s magazine. Geoffrey King was kind of the guy that took over from him. Geoffrey, again, wrote books, was very prominent in the caravan industry. He's very, very technically minded and very much had his mind on where caravan design was going, but also he was very good with technical bits as well. And here they're interestingly reporting on the air cone, which was designed to fit on the front of the caravan to improve aerodynamics. And it's absolutely hilarious. And they say it's got 3 feet long flaps at the sides and a large air sac were threaded to the sides of the front wall of the test van, which in their case was a Thomson T-Line 1000, using the original awning track on one side and additional length fitted to the upper edge of the opposite wall. Basically, they used a 12-volt vacuum cleaner plugged into the car's cigarette lighter to inflate the balloon on the front. It took 3 minutes to fit and inflate. And he's worried about the paint rubbing off on the caravan. He reports that it actually didn't leave a single mark on it, and they actually saved 12 to 16% on their fuel consumption. So again, aerodynamics on the caravan, as we know, are massively important. Obviously this didn't catch on because we don't have them now and they weren't mainstream at all, but it was called the air cone, and it cost £117.30, and it was made by Fiberlock Fabrics in Wareham in Dorset. So it was a British product after all, and they were made to fit each caravan, but obviously they didn't make that many. Moving on, and we spoke in the earlier section about the 60s magazine, about how people used to be a lot more technically minded, and I'm going to show you something now which is going to make you laugh. The article's called Think Big and Build Small, and it's about, well, I'll read the opening paragraph because it's quite funny. When retirement loomed for Geoffrey Ledbetter, is anyone else thinking of Margot and Jerry when they read that? Just saying. He had a number of problems to overcome. He had been a keen caravanner for more than 20 years and wanted to continue with his hobby, especially as he would have more time to enjoy it. But his company car had to be relinquished as he was a sales representative for ICI but retired early, partly because of ill health. So a smaller, more economical car was called for, but such a car would mean a lighter caravan if the Ledbetters were to continue their relatively inexpensive way of having holidays. There was no such caravan on the market, and the solution was obvious. Geoffrey started building his own lightweight model. He tells us how he did it. This thing looks hilarious. I mean, you can imagine it now, can't you? Poor Mrs. Ledbetter forced to go on holiday in that. And there's pictures of Geoffrey sat outside, proudly reading his paper. And Mrs. Ledbetter sat in the front corner, hunched over, writing on a little writing desk. This thing is hilarious, but very, very sweet. Very, very sweet. I do think it's quite adorable and lovely that guys in garages used to build things like this. It said it cost him £200 to build, which, remember, I said that nose cone for that caravan was about £117. So really it was a very, very cheap build. Just quite funny. It's got a little pop-top roof on it to give it more headroom in the middle. But yeah, I'm guessing that caravan might not still be around, but who knows. I think it's adorable. We've got another advert to show you, which all I will say is it was the 80s, which I know I said when it was the 60s and when it was the 70s, but clearly we're still in a time and a place. So you've got this lady who is not really wearing anything, and she's holding a tiny box with her hands with her very long painted nails. It's for hold speed cruise control, which is a box you can fit to your car to electronically hold the speed. It sounds dangerous. It sounds like the sort of person who looks at the Morco hairdryer that bolts to your cooker and connects to a battery would look at this box that you can buy and control the speed of your vehicle with as being an equally attractive proposition. Or who knows, the rather 1980s looking girl who's holding it might have sold it for you. All I can say is, haven't times changed? Finally, at the back of the magazine, we've got the section that says, "Dear Editor, I must say," and these are the letters from members. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of letters in really small print with not many photos. So it goes to show how involved people were in the magazine. But like we said, no social media to argue with each other. We kind of only had the magazine as a buffer, which I can only imagine the sorts of letters that landed at the news desk for the En Route magazine back then, but never made it to print. How amazing would it be if they were still around? But, you know, it's the usual things of just caravanners adding their 2 pennies in. It's just funny to read some of them and quite sweet some of them, but on the whole, it's just people sharing their experiences. The very last thing I'll show you for 1981 is the page which advertises club equipment. And who wouldn't want a tie with the Caravan Club logo stamped on it, or even playing cards with the Caravan Club logo stamped on the back of them? Here you can buy everything from a pennant to a tea towel to a car badge and even a keyring. And some of the prices are quite funny. The tie was £2.50. You could buy a binder for the magazine for £4.75. That seems quite expensive. And the car badge is £2.50. Window sticker, 15 pence. It's these were sort of things though that sold in big numbers, and it's really common to see caravans on site with Caravan Club stickers in the window, and the car badges as well. You'd see lots of those around. So obviously this is an era where the club is a club. It's something that people are proud to be a part of. It is a club. Whereas now it's more of something you join to access a site network. It doesn't quite have that same feeling amongst the membership that it perhaps once did. And they certainly don't produce regalia like this anymore. It's quite funny to see it, really. You still get bits and pieces. You can still get the window stickers and things, but they don't do the pennant flag anymore, which I've tried to get one for my vintage Caravan because we have a pennant mast, but certainly the other bits and pieces. So that kind of, but I don't think that's a reflection on the club. I think that's how times have changed. I think we've had years of knowing older people who are part of clubs and things, who really go hard with the regalia and stuff, and it's kind of scared subsequent generations off a bit, I think. It's kind of the same for everything. It's not unique to the Caravan and Motorhome Club. It's how times have changed. And times continue to change as we move into November 1998. By now it's rebranded the Caravan Club magazine. It's full colour. We've got the spine on the side of it, and there are 92 pages in the magazine. So I'm going to rattle through this one because it's not quite as endearing as the others. But straight away, looks very familiar. We've got the contents page, ways of contacting the club. And the big news in this magazine is the Towcar Awards. I apologise in advance for the next couple of minutes because I'm going to struggle to say nice things about some of these cars. 1998, remember. Possibly the lowest ebb of caravan and car design the world has ever seen will be the late 90s and early 2000s, and there are some truly uninspiring cars here, from the Seat Arosa to the Seat Cordoba. I don't even know what one of those is. The Volkswagen Polo Estate, Citroen Zara, possibly the worst Citroen ever made, Vauxhall Astra 2-litre Estate, Hyundai Sonata. That's just misery on 4 wheels. Skoda Octavia, still a popular tow car today. Mitsubishi Charisma, the irony. And oh, we've got the Land Rover Freelander, which of course was a new car back then. It's 1.8 litre petrol. It's a no from me. Oh, it gets better. Volkswagen Golf Cabriolet Avant-Garde. You got things like the Ford Galaxy. Gosh, those were everywhere on campsites in the late 90s and early 2000s. Toyota Avensis, I remember those. Oof. Ford Mondeo Estate. It's still kind of the last of the old-fashioned Ford Mondeos, now seen with gaffer tape on the bumpers. Isuzu Trooper, gosh, they were everywhere as well. Beast of a car. And the Vauxhall Frontera, 3.2 litre V6. It's, wow. Very uninspiring, but the overall winner was the Audi A6 2.5 litre TDI Avant Estate, which, fair, pretty good car at the time. I just can't believe how this is just 2 pages of blue and grey. Like, there's the odd colour, there's the odd shade of red, and there's one yellow car. Apart from that, blue, grey, they're all very uninspiring. Talking about inspiring things, we've got a really funny advert coming up. The best things in life are free, apparently. And this is an advert for a Philips mobile phone. You're going to love this. This is an exclusive offer to club members. And, oh gosh, £218.95 for the whole package. 35 pence. 35 pence a minute to make a call on it, plus a £15.99 a month line rental. Gosh, mobile phones were really expensive back then. And it says it's ideal for work, safety and play, and shows a picture of a woman who's at the side of the road with the bonnet up on her car. It's wild. This is from Phone Express, and probably someone's got one of these Philips phones in a drawer somewhere, and it probably still works. Moving on, we've got various bits of news from the club, and we've got a test of a Rapido pop-top caravan, which has a suitably 90s inspired interior, which is awful. At some point, I know we're going to look at these vehicles and caravans of the 90s and think, wow, those were great, but I just don't think we're there quite yet. When we've looked at the stuff from the 60s and the early 80s, it's kind of a little bit more, I don't know, a bit classic maybe. Whereas this Rapido, to give it its due, still looks quite modern by today's standards, until you look at the inside. But the club conclude it gets 8 out of 10, so pretty decent caravan. That upholstery, I can't cope. So we've come to an article called Movers and Shifters, which in 1998 is very early days of motorised movers on caravans. Now, a lot of Americans watching this will be getting excited about the self-driving trailers, which are using electric vehicle motors to be able to manoeuvre the trailer, as well as assist the electric vehicle when towing. Not that motor movers in Europe do this, but most people seem excited at the prospect of using that feature to help with hitching. Now, if you didn't know, motor movers have been around in Europe for the last 20 plus years, maybe 25 years now. And here we've got a trial of everything that was on the market. Now, the really funny thing is, the initial design idea was to hitch the caravan up to something that was motorised, or to use a replacement jockey wheel that had power to it. Very, very heavy, cumbersome devices which just didn't work very well. And the only chassis mounted mover at the time was the Carver Mark 1 motor mover, which, if you've forgotten, has a 0 to 60 speed faster than a Tesla. I kid you not, I used a Carver Mark 1 a couple of months back. It was fitted to a caravan that came in at work, and it took off so fast. They have no soft start on them, which every motor mover now has got. So funny that back in 1999 or 98, sorry, this was over £1,000 to have one of these fitted. They're about £1,200 now, which if you factor in inflation and that kind of thing, big difference in the cost of one then versus now. And of course we know the chassis mounted motor mover would reign supreme because pretty much every new caravan in Britain has one fitted. We've got the new caravan report for 1999 and it's so uninspiring. We've got the ABI Quartz, we've got the Coachman Amara, we've got the Compass Lynx. Like I said, this was the absolute peak of just white box mania. Every caravan looks the same, every caravan's got that same curved front end, same shaped windows, same little 3 windows at the front, just so uninspiring. And I'm really glad that the industry is beginning to pick itself up again and make caravan design a little bit more interesting, because certainly these just look rubbish. We've got a familiar name here. John Wickersham talked us through winter hibernation. Again, the club love to correspond with its members to give them hints and tips about how to look after their caravan. John Wickersham was kind of the 90s version of John Yoxall, who we talked about, and Geoffrey King. John Wickersham actually wrote the original caravan manual, which was published by Haynes, and he knew everything there was to know about caravans, fixing them, repairing them, maintaining them. And his daughter, Sammy, friend of the channel, has written an updated version of the caravan manual to continue her dad's legacy. And she continues to write for the club and continues to share that knowledge and help people to make the most out of their caravan, which we need people like that in the industry, actual real experienced caravanners who share their wisdom and knowledge and experience because it helps others. Now, these sort of articles get recycled every year, but it's never too late to brush up on your knowledge and just check, are you winterizing your caravan properly? Are you cleaning it properly? Are you looking after the chassis effectively? Never hurts to just reread some of this information and just see if you're missing anything. We have a tow car test of the Mazda 323 1.8 injection. Moving on. Why was 90s car design so bad? Just terrible. Moving towards the back of the magazine, we've got the letters pages, which there's still 3 or 4 pages of letters. Obviously this is very early days of the internet, so not many people would have moved on to forums and things then. So again, the magazine is still one of the main ways to communicate with other members and for the club to communicate to the members themselves. And finally, we get to the back of the magazine, and by the late 90s they started the tail lights section, which is still one of my favourite pages of the magazine because you never know what you're going to find. And at the top we've got the report on the attempt to break the caravan speed record, 127.8 miles an hour. Which was 1 mile an hour above the former towing speed record, which was set by the Autosport Alpha, which if you follow me on social media, you will know all about. I'm not saying any more, go check it out. Towed by a Chrysler Viper V10 powered car with a tiny little Abbey Iona behind it. Wow, that was quite a feat. But the thing that really caught my eye was this little picture of a Cheltenham Sable, which was exhibited at Goodwood Motor Racing Circuit, which apparently in 1998 was the first year it had taken place after 30 years in limbo. So the caravan was the manager's office, and it's a late 1960s Cheltenham Sable. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that the Goodwood had 30 years off and then came back. But late 1998 was the month that Goodwood allowed the classic race again. So that brings us to the end of our little tour through some of the Caravan and Motorhome Club archives and a bit of my own as well. Hope you've enjoyed looking through them. Like I said, do check out the Motoring magazine archive website if you want to have a look through them yourself. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. We're going to do another archive tour very, very soon. So thanks for coming along. If you made it this far, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure that you like Not Another White Box on all forms of social media. See you again soon.